G'day mates, in today's video I want to talk about the FNCS qualifiers, one of the last chances to skip semifinals and go straight into grand finals, and some of these teams really stood up to the opportunity, including the OG GOATs, Stretch and Commandment, coming out of seemingly nowhere, people thinking they'd already quit. You guys asked me, are they still playing? What are they doing? Apparently they're still on top, qualifying straight through to grand finals. We also had Antics and Xweezy absolutely dominate on EU, but at the end of today's video I want to cover a big topic a lot of you guys keep asking about. Why is Fortnite competitive dying, and what is going on with the huge decline in player base? In case you guys have missed it, the player base is declining at a rapid rate, and at the end of today's video I want to give you my thoughts on that. Should we be concerned, and is Fortnite competitive truly dying? There's a lot to talk about. Let's just jump into it. I want to start off talking about the regions with NA, even though I normally talk about EU first, because we had Jamper and Duke walking away in first on 224 points, absolutely dominating, their average placement of 8.17 despite a game where they went down 36. They had an 8 elim win, 3 elim fifth, 9 elim second, 5 elim second, and 4 elim third. 224 points as absolutely ridiculous match history from them. They played so phenomenally well, and I really want to talk about who came in second, Commandment and Stretch. Yes, you heard that correctly. Commandment and Stretch. When I did my prediction video, I talked about how you can't really put this team in your top 5 because you have nothing to go off. You don't know how well they've been playing. You can't say, oh, Cash Cup's been really good for them. You just have to know that when it comes to FNCS, Stretch is going to show up, and Commandment obviously with him. But the reason why I mentioned Stretch is he is now one of 2 players on NA East up there with Kanata who have made all 14 FNCS grand finals. Every single one. So when you finally think maybe Stretch or Commandment have quit Fortnite, maybe they've disappeared for good, they're not taking it seriously, they show up for FNCS, and they did it with the Zate Classic, the 8 elim win in their first game. I love to see this storyline of the Zate Classic. If you guys don't know, it's just winning game 1 of set lobby finals. It's just what Zate does best. He almost always wins the first game. That is extended onto his ex-teammate Stretch. Along with Commandment, they played really well as well. They're very consistent match history. They had a 13th, 10th, and a 14th, but they had 3 other top 5 finishes, all with decent elims too. They play really well, and they don't just play full psycho height. Their first game win was off a height take, but honestly, that's not just their one trick. They were really consistent. We also had Centered and Cold in third. Now, this is an interesting one because they didn't do it out of South Sleepy. I talked about how there was 2 teams that I was most worried to see how they were affected by vehicles being removed. Booga and Mira proved that. They were fine. Booga and Mira absolutely nailed it. They didn't have the vehicle, but they qualified last week playing really well. But Centered and Cold was struggling out of Southside Sleepy, and I question this one because it's not just the vehicles this season. Centered and Cold have been abusing the vehicles since last season. I made videos months ago about how Centered was one of the only teams using vehicles to their full advantage. So without them, it looks like South Sleepy wasn't going too well for them. So they switched up their job spot. They went to Fortress, which is where Byler and Peterbot came first from in the first qualifier, so it was uncontested, and it was a recipe for success. They started slow, and it's a new drop spot, so you might not know what you're going down. They got a 0 elim 38th, but then they got a 4 elim 14th, 4 elim 12th, 3 elim 14th, 10 elim 4th, and then a 6 elim win. So their last 2 games really bringing it back once they found their footing at the new drop spot, but they're not going to be able to go there in grand finals, or at least I assume they're not going to contest Peterbot. So we might see Cold and Center try to figure out a new drop spot that isn't Sleepy, because they've proven they can still very much qualify. They're a top tier team still, but South Sleepy just is not working for them. We saw Elite and Bank come in 4th place, and then Teo and Pledge in 5th, and I want to give a huge shout out to Teo because on the back of his 3 elim 5th clutch in the last game, I think he was solo from first rotating zone and held on for dear life. They only qualified by 5 points, so if Teo had clutched any less, they would not have made it. So they just beat out Skittles and Users, who played really well. Voil and X were up there. Neverfire and Rituals, 2 players who are very underrated on NA right now. Illist and Jack, and then Bucky and Cam. Now, I feel so bad for Bucky and Cam. This photo does perfect justice to just why. You could see the hype of them having just won game 5. They have absolutely popping off. Their game 4 was an 8 elim 3rd, and then going into their last game, Cam's PC crashes and they don't load in and they don't qualify. Look at this match history. They were on such a dominant run. 2 Elim 23rd, 1 Elim 32nd, 1 Elim 34th. Just your mental's got to be ruined. You're playing not the best, and then you bring it back with an 8 Elim 3rd and a 10 Elim win. You're going into last game, vibes are high, and you crash. It seriously has to be the worst feeling. So big shout out to Bucky and Cam. They've proven they can do it. They had Uncon Bugle. If they get it again, qualifier 3, I'm sure they can bring it back. They've proven they can. We also had Tahi and Paper outside just in 11th place, who they were doing really well all tournament until unfortunately their last 2 games, a 0 Elim 30th and then a 4 Elim 20th, really let them down. I'm so sorry, guys. I just realized I just talked about NA East and didn't mention Clicks and Day. My apologies. I know you guys were panicked, but Clicks and Day ended up coming in 16th. They were looking really hot to try and take this one. Their first 2 games are a bit iffy. They rotate out of Joneses. They went straight into Scoped and Magnolia at Sanctuary, and Scoped and Magnolia versus Clicks and Day was going to be a clash we were going to see happen time and time again throughout the day. They lost it the first 2 times, but then after that, they got on a bit of a streak. They got an 8 Elim 6th, a 5 Elim 15th, a 1 Elim 12th, and then Clicks and Day was set to try to run away with it in the last game, going for a big Elim win, and unfortunately Day went a little bit over aggressive despite Clicks' comms. They went down to straight 2v2 and went down in 25th, and that is the reason why they came in 16th. They're going to be guaranteed to make semifinals off their consistency so far, and after winning the round 3 tournament, absolutely dominating, they're in a good spot right now. Honestly, I know a lot of people are scared, and obviously Clicks fans are always very, very critical of Day, or saying that he shouldn't have jumped in, he was going too crazy, but they've got a few things they can mix up. But I like the fact that after their first 2 games going down in early and mid game fights, they didn't lose confidence. They kept pushing those fights, and I'd love to see that from this team, because they are one of the scariest fighting teams in the world. And even despite going down those early fights, Clicks kept their mental up, he kept excited, he kept Day's vibes up, and then even when Day in that last game went down, Clicks didn't freak out. And right now I'm seeing a lot of maturity and a lot of growth from this team. They're not just 2 mechanical fraggers who are running through the lobby and yelling the whole time. They are looking like an actual proper team. So they haven't had the performance they need just yet, but I have a lot of hope for them. And I think if you've been watching Clicks properly, I'm not just being a Clicks fan here who's just going to freak out. He has actually been putting in a lot of work as an IGL. And I think today, even despite a 16th place, it showed. Again, doing the things that are really boring as an IGL, trying to keep the team's comms up, trying to keep the chemistry going, not freaking out, not yelling and just going crazy when things aren't working. It was really quite impressive to see, I'm not going to lie. And they kind of met their match with Scoped and Magnolia, who were playing really, really well. Unluckily for them, they had the opposite. They started off really, really strong with that 9 Elim 2nd in their second game. They did fall off the pace a little bit at the end, finishing in 14th overall. Scoped is unable to play the next qualifier because he's going to his prom, which just blows my mind. These super influential, very, very wealthy professional esports players are still, at the end of the day, kids. I don't want to call him a kid, but compared to me, going to prom seems like such a long time ago. But I like the priorities, but either way, they really did need to try to get that big placement today. I think based off their series point leaderboards, even if they can't play next week, they should still make semifinals, and I'm sure maybe Scoped can play the opens and get a few more points as well, but I will get clarification on whether they're going to make it already. But either way, it was exciting to see both the teams clash, and I think if an easier team to fight is going Sanctuary, Clicks and Day will find a lot more success with their strategy, but Scoped was putting up a really, really good fight today. Kicking off with EU, we have Antics and Xweezy taking out the top spot on 203 points, 6 matches, no wins, but really, really consistent match history. Only 1 game outside top 10. Now, the most noteworthy game for me, though, would be the 7 Elim 2nd place in their 3rd last game. Antics was solo from before first rotating zone and got 6 more Elims, I think, or 5 to himself, and got the 2nd place. From here on, it was pretty much home stretch for Antics and Xweezy. They just had to close it out. In their second last game, they got a 5 Elim 8th, and then the 0 Elim 29th did not even matter. So the Frenchmen are through into the finals. They played really, really well. We had Kami and Seti in second on 200 points. They brought it back big at the very end. A 7 Elim 3rd and a 3 Elim win in their last 2 games to just miss out on the top spot. But look at the rest of the match history. They had an average placement of 6.3. An average placement of just outside top 5 in 6 matches of set lobbies on EU. Kami and Seti are looking so ridiculous coming into finals, and that kind of match history is what you want to see. Because remember, grand finals is a 12-game format. So yes, elims are worth a lot, but having consistent gameplay every single game to not have a single one without good points is massive. Now, we had Noah Riley and Vidil on the opposite end of that. They did still have some decently consistent games, like a 17th, 11th, or an 18th, but their 9 elim win in their second last game really jumped them back up in the running, and then a 5 elim 5th to close out. We had T-Chips and Art Skill, which I feel like is a team that's been around for a while now in the last couple of seasons, placing consistently, but really hasn't got enough attention for how well they're doing on 178. And then Kiko and Indreda just closing it out, their last few games being a consistent but not insane 3 elim 10th and then 2 elim 9th. They were contested in their first 2 games, one of which they went down in 43rd, so getting a top 5 well contested even in a few of the games is very impressive. But the last team that just miss out on qualifying, Flowiz and Mappy, they were contested all 6 games, and you can see they lost the first 4 of those spawn fights, a 46th, 31st, 34th, and 44th, but in their last 2 games got a 10 elim second and a 12 elim second. Unfortunately for them, their last game came down to a 2v2 low ground versus Seti and Kami on the high ground, and then unfortunately they lost to Kami and Seti. If they had won that, they would have placed, they would have got top 5 and would have made it straight to grand finals. But hey, they got to hold down Coney. Flowiz and Mappy have got 2 teams at their heels at Coney. Today it was Podesai and Snazy. We also have the OCE boys, Vortex and Suns, who unfortunately are struggling at this point to make it into round 4. But if Flowiz and Mappy make it off spawn, they're up there with Malibuka and Mustache for level of consistency. They are playing so ridiculously well right now. We had Rifty's team just missing out in 7th. We had Hen and Queasy in 8th, which was good to see because a lot of people started to whisper about how they were going to play without vehicles. They're not playing as consistently as before. They needed the Lambo, carried by Lambo. All those kind of things started to come out. They started the tournament fantastically. An 11 elim win to open up and a 3 elim 8th. Unfortunately, their last 4 games, though, came a bit more unstuck. The 2 elim 14th wasn't too bad, but they did just miss out on qualifying as well. We had Sky and Dandir, and then we had Julian Com and Waze. Now, again, I need to say this. Teams who did not get top 5 today and did not make it to grands, they still have plenty of chances to make it into grand finals. They have another qualifier in the week coming on the weekend, and then they also have semifinals to make it off consistency. So don't panic if your favorite team isn't up here. And I'm missing some big names. Vino and Aqua are missing. They were contested by Tripper and Thomas on the south side of Covert, finishing next to each other on the leaderboard. They went pretty even off spawn. Well, I'm going to say Tripper and Thomas won more times on spawn, but then didn't do as well with it in the end game. The one game Vino and Aqua really made it off spawn was a 9 elim win, but they weren't always going down to Tripper and Thomas. A few times they won the south side contest, rotated into the rest of Covert, and they went down. But unfortunately for Vino and Aqua, it looks like Tripper and Thomas are putting up more of a fight at Covert than what Tayson and Chapix did for them. So rough to see Vino and Aqua get their worst placement so far, but the one game they made it out, they stuck to their form. We had iDrop and Jerky who were conned on Logjam the entire time, so unfortunate for them, they didn't place much higher. And you'll notice no Benji and Savage. They actually missed out making round 4 by 1 singular point. 1 point was the difference, but Tilted ended up being quadruple conned in finals, so I don't think they were getting a top 5 anyway. The series leader point maybe would have been a bit better, but honestly, unless they bomb out in qualifier 3, because they've made round 4 and then a really high round 3, they're almost definitely going to be in semifinals anyway. Last but not least, we have NA West. We had Beast and Tautai coming out in first on 194, 6 matches, 2 wins. Then we had Batman Booga and Wheels, one of my favorite teams in any region, coming out in second on 183. I genuinely think Batman Booga is one of the funniest and most entertaining pro content creators right now. Just watching them play and stream this tournament when they came second was so exciting and so enjoyable. We had Elige and Dragon in third. Again, another team that was streaming these finals. Super happy to see Elige finding success playing on West. Obviously, he usually plays on East, but he is Central, so he can play either way. He's decided to play on West and doing really, really well, kind of following the footsteps of his Hispanic counterpart, Yelty. We had School and Kinzo in fourth, and then Slicknick and Convict in fifth. I do want to mention it was crazy to see Fabs and Snacky go down the leaderboard after a 16 elim fourth in their first game. Snacky showing that he is one of the, in my opinion, best fighters in the world when he's just feeling confident and just rolling through everyone. Unfortunately, the rest of their games did go downhill, but they'll make semifinals, and I'm sure they'll easily win at least one game in semifinals if they don't get a top 5 in the next qualifier, which honestly they should pretty easily do. You'll also notice Epic Whale and Arkham aren't up there on the list. They did miss out on game 1. Epic Whale apparently forgetting what time the finals are on, even though they're on the same time as all the others. But like I said, Arkham and Epic Whale aren't even trying to qualify at this point. They're happy just to keep playing and streaming the events and have fun with it. They did start to get contested in the second half of the tournament, which did start causing them some issues, which makes people start talking about how they should be taking this more seriously. They need to qualify. What if they get contested in semis? You got to remember the semifinals format. If somehow Arkham and Epic Whale don't get top 5 in any of the qualifying weeks, all they have to do is win one game out of 17. Arkham and Epic Whale will 100% win at least one game out of 17, even if they're contested by 2 teams. All it takes is one good game for this team, so no concerns there. But West, obviously, once you start to take out a lot of those bigger teams like Reed's team, it does start to get a little bit quieter, but honestly, the finals were still really enjoyable. I want to answer the question you guys have been asking on all my social medias. Aussie, what is your opinion on the declining player base? Do you think Fortnite is dying? And people love using that term and throwing around Fortnite's dying. It is what it is. I've always not really liked it that much, but I get it. It sums up what people are thinking pretty easily. And in case you guys haven't seen the stats, let me break it down for you and let you know what people are talking about. So on EU, last season, we had 32,681 duos playing in the qualifiers. This season, we have 20,982. So that's roughly about a 12,000 duo drop in players on EU. NA East is arguably even worse. We have 16,192 last season. This season, we only have 6,186. So we have about a 10,000 duo drop between the seasons, from 16,000 down to 6. And the easiest and most simple answer is the correct one here. People aren't enjoying playing the game. They're just not playing the game as much. I know you're thinking, Aussie, the first qualifiers took place on a Monday. There's exams going on right now. There's a lot going on. I get it. I thought that might be the case as well. So I said, let's wait until the weekend. The weekend for NA, we've seen even less duos playing, 5,790. And I know it's Mother's Day, but round 1 and 2 qualifiers are on the Saturday, which is not Mother's Day. And the majority of players will not make it out of round 1 and 2. And if you're enjoying the game, you're going to play FNCS for the experience anyway. So I don't really think that's going to have a huge impact. I think the only thing that explains this big of a drop in player base is people aren't enjoying the game. It's the simple answer. And I'm not trying to make this video negative. I'm not trying to convince you of anything or make it doom and gloom. It's my livelihood as a Fortnite content creator is linked very heavily to the success of Fortnite. I'm not trying to convince you the game is terrible and is dying and you should quit it. I see a lot of pros on the timeline freaking out and making those kind of statements. I know why they are. It's because they're panicking. But I've been through a lot of games in my time where they've gone through their ups and downs. Fortnite's been through its ups and downs before as well. And I think there is still a lot of hope for Fortnite competitive. And the argument I'm going to make is we still have so many people playing in things like the duo hype cups. We have almost 12,000 duos playing on NA. That is over double the player base of the open NA East participation for FNCS. So double the amount of duos are playing in the hype cup compared to actual FNCS. EU has 17,000 as well. So people are still interested in competitive, at least at the base level. But I just think there's a lot Fortnite can do right now to help the game competitively grow and bring that casual player base along the line into proper competitive, as I would argue, like where there's prize money tournaments. But I think there's a few things they have to do for that. I've been talking about it for the longest time. A proper ranked game mode would enable players to go from playing in hype cups and just playing the game and trying to get better to then, getting to see how much better they're getting on a daily basis. And they're going to go watch pros like Clicks play, like Booger, who are a way higher rank, and see what they're doing differently. Then they'll watch them play tournaments. Then they'll want to play in the tournaments, and then they'll improve, and then they'll get into scrims, and that's what grows the whole competitive scene. I think Fortnite is such a phenomenal game, and even those of you guys who aren't enjoying it right now will still admit this is one of the best games ever made. And right now, unfortunately, Epic's not doing a fantastic job of catering towards the competitive community, and I get that. It's because the casual player base is so massive, and the no builds and everything around this season, bringing back all those casual player bases, made them a lot of money, and they're a business. I'm not going to try and say competitive is more important than casual, but what I am going to say is that for how much money and time Epic needs to invest in competitive, it is a huge asset to their business. When competitive is thriving and people are watching all the tournaments and enjoying them, they're buying more skins, they're playing more, they're trying to get better, they're spending longer on the game, and that competitive community plays the game for 10, 12 hours a day. The casual community doesn't play as much. But again, I'm not trying to make the argument that one's more important than the other. I'm just trying to say that for how little time and effort Epic has to put into competitive, it earns them a lot of money and achieves a lot for the game. I'm not asking them to reinvent the the wheel and do all this crazy stuff. I'm not even saying put on a World Cup. Things like that would bring hype back. I'm just asking for them to do a little bit more than they are now. And I think Epic is starting to. The most recent changes to the shotgun show me that they are attempting in some way to listen to the competitive community, and they've noticed that the player base is dropping. I'm not entirely sure why they changed the drum gun, and I think a lot of pros are unhappy with the striker change because they wanted to see it do more headshot damage and be more skillful. I get that, but I think ultimately Epic is trying to appeal to the competitive community, at least somewhat right now. They very heavily are leaning into the casual side of the game, getting rid of one-shot headshots on everything, even changing weapons that aren't in the loot pool like the spaz. So even in creative, they don't one-shot headshot. I find that a little bit strange, and it does concern me a little bit, but I do think Epic will start to notice and pay attention to this massive drop in player base and try to fix it. Summer has a lot of potential. I truly think this season is a filler season. We've gone from a very SMG spray heavy meta with the Spider-Man and a couple other new things into a season where almost nothing changed. And I think that was the plan because this is a filler season. It's only 70 days long. It's right before summer, the most important season for Fortnite, when obviously all the school kids, the majority of the world goes on break, at least at some point. Obviously NA and EU being the Northern Hemisphere go on the biggest break, but it's when the player base has the most chance to surge and thrive. And I think that's what Fortnite's putting their focus in. That's why this season has had so little change. It's basically the same as last season, no Spider-Man. And yeah, we have these blimps around the map, which are great, but the only map changes we're getting are the blimps crashing anyway. But I'm not here to complain about Fortnite and say the game's terrible right now. I'm still enjoying playing it, but the stats clearly show that there's pro players and a lot of the competitive community aren't. And I think the game can still cater towards them. We've been talking about and asking for it for the longest time. Split loot pools. The game needs to be more split. You need competitive to feel more competitive and let the casuals still be happy. I don't have the stats for how the casual player base is looking right now. I know content was going crazy with no builds and they were getting a whole bunch of attention with all these people coming back. I want to see if no builds is still doing as well, if the player base is still as happy casually, but it shouldn't matter. The competitive community should be allowed to thrive on its own. We've started to finally split casual and like from competitive and tournaments from arena. There was vehicles only in arena, but not in tournaments, accepting the idea that people still want to drive vehicles in arena and have fun, but then in tournaments the vehicles were causing issues. And that was a really great divide. If we can just keep going down that line of making tournaments feel different from the rest of the game, even having arena feel different from the rest of the game, that would be amazing for everyone. I'm sick of this discussion, and I know there's going to be comments despite me saying this of people saying but casual's more important, pros need to stop complaining, sweats always ruin the game. Why does it need to be that way? Why can't tournaments and the competitive player base be made happy with their own game modes, and then the casuals get to play their game with their game modes? Why do they have to keep impacting each other? I get when casuals go to watch tournaments, if there's new items and new weapons, they might be confused, but then they'll learn and they'll enjoy it and they'll figure out the game more. And then maybe they'll think, hey, like the way he's playing, as much as it's not wacky and crazy, it does look harder. It looks more skillful. I'm going to give that a go and see how I go. And then with the proper ranked playlist, it builds. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm crazy for saying this, but I also wanted to make sure I address this point without sounding like the people that's complaining on social media saying the game is dying. I don't believe that. I think Fortnite can still grow and have massive signs of growth in the future. It is still one of the most popular games in the world, but when you see such a big drop in player base, it needs to be addressed in some way. But I don't think it needs to be more complicated than people aren't enjoying the game right now. But there's no reason why Epic can't make changes next season to make people enjoy it. We'll just have to see how it goes. But if this trend continues on, it is a scary sign for Fortnite. But I think just one season of seeing a big decline in player base is not enough reason to start saying the game is dying. All right, guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.